Hello everybody and welcome to the third and final webinar in our three-part series on the wings of resilience. I'm Tash, the founder and CEO here at Drought Angels, and we're really excited to bring this final series to you. We've got an amazing guest speaker talking to you today. So I will introduce, we're welcoming back our wonderful Lou McGregor from Finding Yellow, who is going to be emceeing today. And we'll look forward to hearing from our amazing guest who is going to share some pretty amazing insights into his story and some tools for you. So thank you, Lou.
Thanks, Tash, and welcome everyone to our third webinar series. We're very excited about today, and we thank you for joining us for this series as a whole. We've seen that we've had almost 900 people watch the last two episodes, which is absolutely fantastic and hopefully helping the broader community out there. So we encourage you to grab your friends and family on board now and share the videos after, because what we're learning from these incredible people, you really won't get anywhere else. Before I start today, I want to say I can already see there's quite a few of you online now, which is fantastic. So please don't be shy. Type some questions in. We want to hear from you. It's your webinar, and we want to pick Shane's brain today. So please don't be shy there. And I also want to say a massive shout out to Drought Angels. They have been magnificent. It's a tough time for everyone this time of year. And so if when we're talking about any of the topics today, you feel inclined to help them out, please go to the website that's up on the screen and help them any way you can, making a donation, especially with the Christmas campaign coming up. So that's enough of that. I'm going to introduce to you the man of the day, well, the man of the hour, really, the man of the year, Shane Bird. Welcome. Now, Shane is actually just a bit of a background. He's a mindset coach. He's actually known as the Farmer's Mindset Coach. We're going to talk about that in a lot more depth in a minute. He's also been a carpenter, a master practitioner of NLP, a farmer. He served in the New Zealand Army for 6.5 years. There's a lot. And look at him. He's so young. So we really want to find out about him and what makes this man tick. But first of all, welcome, Shane. Hello.
Hey, Lou. Thank you for having me. Super grateful to be here.
Fantastic. And Shane, where are you calling from today?
I'm actually back at home in New Zealand. So originally from New Zealand, currently living in Sydney, but back home for 10 days here in New Zealand at Mum and Dad's place on the farm. So if I cut out, it's because I'm on rural broadband internet, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to. So hopefully I'm not too patchy or I don't drop out. But yeah, good to be home on the farm. It's been a little while since we've been back.
Fantastic. And so you live in Sydney currently?
Yep, that's it. Yep, been there almost 3 years now.
Right, fantastic. And who do you live with in Sydney?
So I'm there with my partner and my son, he's just turned 21 today. He lives with us over there as well, and he's with us because they grow up. Cody. Cody's his name.
Cody. All right. Well, from everyone watching online from around Australia, happy 21st birthday, Cody. That's pretty exciting. Now, Shane, we've got a lot to get through this morning. But I think, what's fantastic and what people love to hear is your journey. And as I said, you've got mindset coach, carpenter, NLP, farmer, the army. Do you want to take us back to the beginning out of which of those came first for you? And then maybe we'll talk about each one as we go and how it evolved into what you do today.
Yeah, I could probably I'll share a bit of a story and then you can pick parts out of it that we can revisit if you like.
Fantastic.
So yep. I was born and raised on a farm, a farm in New Zealand, and Dad had about 1,000 acres, just over 1,000 acres in the middle of the North Island in New Zealand. And when we grew up, I was in a very small community, and the school only had probably 30 kids, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to. So what I found, though, was as I was going through school, I didn't have a lot of friends, and I never really felt like I fitted in. And so that was happening at school. There was only 1 or 2 other kids my age. And then when I get home, I got 3 brothers. And, I sort of always felt like my oldest brother was off doing his own thing. And my youngest 2 brothers were kind of like best mates. So I kind of felt like I didn't fit in at home as well. So I took on this belief that I couldn't have friends and I didn't fit in anywhere. And then I went from a school of 30 to when I went to boarding school and there was 1,300. And I was like, holy smoke, I feel even more alone.
Where was that boarding school?
Massive culture. That was in a place called Fielding, so in the Manawatu in the North Island of New Zealand as well. So yeah, I end up down there and again feeling like I don't fit in. So just kind of going through school, hiding wherever I can, just making my way through school, but ended up with no real sense of direction, had no drive or anything like that. When I came to leave school, I was like, well, what am I going to do? Had no real idea. Thought I wanted to go farming, but wasn't sure. And then the opportunity to join the army came up. So I joined the army straight out of school. Well, actually, I had to wait 6 months till I was old enough because I left school so young. I had to wait till I was old enough to join the army. Went into the army and was fortunate enough to gain that carpentry trade that you talked about. So spent 6.5 years in the New Zealand Army, did a couple of tours to East Timor with the army, which was an eye-opening experience in itself. But again, I was going through life with no real sense of direction, no drive, or no sort of compelling future either. So I was just making my way through life, kind of got sick of the army, got out and came back to the family farm where I am right now, actually, back here. And same thing, just carried on living day to day, nothing really to live for. So it wasn't until about I was in my 30s that I kind of realized I was missing out on a lot of stuff. I'd never set a goal until 3 years ago. And, things started triggering in me that, there's got to be more to life. So that's when I started looking into personal development. And in about 2000, well, it was the early 2000s, I started listening to books and CDs and watching the YouTube videos and stuff. But I decided in about 2015, I was going to actually start going to some seminars. And I went to a seminar, Tony Robbins. A lot of people know Tony Robbins. And that really shifted the way that I saw the world. But then I just became a junkie, right? Became the seminar junkie. Every year or twice a year, I'd go to another 3 or 4 day seminar and it'd give me a little boost. I'd feel great, come home, feel great for 2, 3, 4 weeks, but then easily slip back into those old patterns, right? And that happened. That was another cycle for another number of years until 2019. I actually came across neuro-linguistic programming, which we'll discuss later on. But the key there with the neuro-linguistic programming compared to everything else was understanding what you think is the first step of the problem. But if you want to change what you think, you must change how you think. And this is where it all shifted with me with NLP was I understood how I thought, not what I think, because what you think isn't the problem. How you think is the problem. And that's built from the patterns that we've created in our mind from all those past experiences, especially when we're young as a kid. So for me, felt like I never fitted in. And I always felt like I never fitted in right up until I understood how that came about because I was in a little school and I just felt like I didn't have friends. So then I felt like I couldn't speak up and I couldn't have a voice and all that kind of stuff. So when I understood that, I was able to shift the way that I saw the world, which gave me so much more confidence to be who I am now. And then through that confidence, I was able to develop the skills as a coach through the NLP as well. That then I started helping other people. And then they were like, hey, Shane, can I pay you to help me? Can you be my coach? I was like, well, sure. Why not? And I was doing it part-time. And then it led to being full-time coach. So being a full-time coach now for just shy of 3 years. I started at the start of 2020. And that's pretty much how I got to where I am now.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot to unpack there, but I want to go back to your army days because I think when we're talking about resilience and trauma and situations, and a lot of us think that we have situations in life that are tough to get through, but I can imagine being in the army and at the forefront of conflict. I really think it would be hard pressing to find anything more stressful as that. So I want to ask you about that and how you sounded like quite a shy person that kind of, lived in your own head a little bit. So I want to ask, how did you go with dealing with the stresses of the army? And also to the army, from, I guess, a general perception is about comradeship and, your band of brothers and that sort of rhetoric. How did you find being in the army when you sort of identified as a little bit of a loner without being, that's sort of how you're describing yourself? So I'd love to talk to you about that and how you managed to stay in there for 6.5 years, because that's quite amazing.
Yeah, great and great quality question too. So the first thing around the camaraderie and all that kind of stuff, thinking back now, I realize I had a lot of friends in the army. During the time, because I felt like a loner, I felt like I had no friends. But that was just my internal voice saying, hey, you don't fit in here. You don't fit in here. You don't know how to fit in. You don't know how to have friends. So the day-to-day life, I felt like I didn't fit it in. But the way that I coped with it, and I know this will resonate with a lot of people, was I was drinking. I was drinking a lot because I knew that if I went to the bar, I'd let down my walls, I'd let down the insecurities, and then I'd start talking more to people, and then I would feel like I fitted in. But the problem is, you wake up the next morning and I'm back to the same person with those internal insecurities playing out in the background again. So,
And with a headache.
looking back now, with the headache and an empty pocket too, right? So, but looking back now, I realize I've got a lot of friends from the army that I disconnected from once I left the army because I still didn't think they were friends. But now I know that they were high quality friends. I just didn't know that I had them, and the camaraderie in that is really.
Sorry, Shane. I was just going to say, and I think so many people will relate to this in the way you often hear people say, oh, that person doesn't like me, or I don't fit in here. And, especially young children, you hear that. And I know with my children in the past, I've had to say, but is that the truth? Or is that something that you're feeling within yourself that's putting that blockade up? And it's not actually true, because I was like you when I was younger too. I remember I had a holiday job, and for the first 2 weeks I sat in the toilets in a theme park, the most fun place to work, because I just everyone knew each other and I couldn't bring myself to do that. So I think what you're talking about, a lot of our listeners would relate to, and I meant to say at the beginning, there's quite a few of you on board now. Ask your questions, tell us your experiences. We really want to hear about that. So interesting, you said you realized later that you actually did have friends. So it was in your head.
Yeah, it was my perception. And this is a big clue for everyone, is everything that's happening in your world is your own perception of what's happening. And it's the way that we read it and we see it. And in NLP, we talk about how we have an event happen in front of us and we produce a behavior or a thought pattern around that behavior. So it's just our perception of that. And I'll take this, for example. There's 11 million bits of information coming at us every single second. But we
11 million.
11 million, but we can't process that. So we're designed to reduce that down to 128 bits that we can take in. That means 11 million bits of information are coming at me. I'm going to grab 128 bits of information to give me my perception of what that event means. And that's all produced through the way that we delete, distort, and generalize information. And it's all from past experiences and our beliefs and our values. Now, Lou, you and I could stand there and witness the same event. You could take 128 bits of information. I could take 128 bits of information, and we get two completely different perceptions of it.
That's fascinating.
So the question, yeah, it is. So the question really is, what am I missing out on? Because if you go 11 million divided by 128, it's 85,937 different interpretations of the actual truth.
And it's interpretations of the actual truth, because I guess everyone's truth is their own, based on their past experiences and childhood experiences, like you said, that can be hard to unprogram. So based on that, can you explain in a term that us mere mortals understand of what exactly is NLP?
Yeah, NLP is, it's neuro-linguistic programming. So it's exactly that. Neuro is the brain, linguistic is the language, and program, it's programming. So how do we use the programming of the language of our brain? And we've all been programmed completely differently, right? And if you've got any behavior that's playing out that's undesired, it's an unconscious programming that's playing out in the background. So how can we shift that unconscious programming so we see the same events or get triggered by the same events but operate differently? And it's quite simply understanding how I thought, like I said right at the very start, how you think is the actual problem, not what you think. What you think is the byproduct of how you think. How we think is that unconscious programming, and it started from the day we were born, and in fact, some of it started before that when we're in the womb. So it's understanding how we've taken interpretation of all the events and how we think because of that. And then it's just training ourselves to think differently. So one of the things I use a lot in my coaching is just a standard reframe. Cool, tell me about a thought you have right now. how can you think about that differently? And that's a very short term on how to do that, but we can dig deep on where that thought came from. Who did you learn that thought from? Where did you learn that thought from? What assumptions have you made up about that person or that event saying that or doing that? And then how can we reframe and give a different assumption to it? So then we start creating different thoughts, which produces a different pattern.
So Shane, have you found that most people, when you ask that question, the thoughts that they're thinking, I can imagine without knowing about this, that a lot of them were actually never their own thoughts. They originally came from someone else. Is that true? Like most of the time?
Yep, 100%. The first 7 years of our life is what's called the imprint period. What does that mean? We just take everything we're told to be true because we haven't developed the questioning faculty in our mind. So for the first 7 years, if someone said to me, hey, Shane, you can't ride a bike, I'd be like, okay, I can't ride a bike. Yeah. But then my nephew was here in the weekend and he was 4. That's because his dad and his brothers and his sisters said, hey, Harvey, I'm going to teach you how to ride a bike when he was like 2.5 or 3. And he went, oh, I can ride a bike. He didn't question it. He just believed he could. So that first 7 years is really key. And that's where a lot of those, especially if a child is faced with some sort of traumatic experience, it's going to have a really deeply ingrained belief system there. But even if it's just little constant little chips along the way, the child's still going to be ingrained to have those beliefs just as heavily as if it was a one-off, a traumatic experience. So it's like they call it like compounded PTSD or instant PTSD. It could be a massive event or it could just be compounded over time where it still has that same effect.
And do you find, Shane, without going or getting into psychology a lot here, that with children experiencing this and adolescent, then they go through adolescence and they, from what I've seen of people, and I know that in 40s and 50s when people call it the midlife crisis, but I've seen with my own experiences and friends of friends that it seems to be around the 40 and 50-year-old mark that all this stuff that maybe is kind of kept buried or you've just accepted for what it is then only goes, whoa, whoa, I don't like this anymore. And I actually have to deal with it and I actually have to face it. Do you feel that like with your clients, is there a lot of that in that particular age group?
Yeah, that's probably a very accurate statement, actually. And I've never actually thought of it that way, but now that you bring it to my attention, most definitely, I get a lot of those people. I'd say even in the 30s, I get a lot from the 30s to the 50s. So what I would assume, actually thinking about it now, is we wake up one day and go, shoot, we're nearly halfway through our life. You know, if we're in our 30s, I'm halfway to retire. If I'm in my 40s or 50s, I'm halfway to the end. And then it's, you turn and look back and you go, I don't actually like everything I've done. I wish I'd done more. And then, because, there's a book by Ronnie, forget her name, Bronnie Bear, I think it is, The Regrets of the Dying. And one of them is, I wish I'd done more. The number one regret is I wish I'd done more. So maybe now it's more sort of obvious that we get to that age and we go, shoot, I've done that. Maybe I could have done more. And I want to really capitalize on the next 30, 40, 50 years.
Or perhaps it's even, because I think a lot of people can do a lot of things, but like you said, but they can do it, but maybe how they feel about it internally, they can fake it for so long, like you did in the army. You were friendly, you got by, but you still went to bed every night with a few drinks and probably had that crippling feeling inside. So maybe it's like that. I can continue to do what I want to do, but I just want to feel better as I'm doing it and be more authentic when I'm doing it as well. Like it's, I met with a client this morning and she has a great expression, WTF, what the 50s? Like I'm 50 now. I don't care what the 50s. I'm just going to do what I do without this baggage and continue on. So that all sounds amazing, but how do people, how long does it take to, we've had 30 years of this stuff that we've kind of kept inside ourselves. Someone comes to you and goes, I don't like this anymore. I want to do your coaching, your NLP, but how long, I don't know, it's a piece of string, but does it take to unravel all of this?
8 hours. 8 hours.
8 hours. 8 hours, that's
Yeah,
it.
so I can do, I've got a process with, I can do hypnotherapy. I'm a trained hypnotherapist, yes, but I've got a process called the personal breakthrough formula, and it's specifically designed to understand everything that's happened in your life that you've got a negative charge or a negative emotional attachment to. Because the reason we don't do more in our life is the fears, doubts, and insecurities triggered by those negative charges from the past. So I've got a process that I can put someone through in about, it takes sort of 7 to 9 hours. I say 8 hours. And what it does is I get a full personal life history. I find all those negative emotional attachments. And then what I do is I put them through another process that takes about 3 or 4 hours. And then the last 3 or 4 hours is all about understanding how to remove that. And it's retraining the unconscious mind, retraining that programming by removing that negative association, which is doing exactly what I said earlier, giving another perception on all those events. And when we do that, when we remove the negative attachment, the negative thought on those events and replace it with positive learnings, whenever that event pops up again, we're triggered back to the positive learnings, which has empowered us. So then we feel, oh, that event served me. That happened for me, not to me. So now I can go forward, taking those positive learnings and not hold back. And like, yeah, literally in 8 hours, it'll completely, it's like, I use this metaphor. It's like taking the hard drive out of your computer and putting a brand new one in. And then after that 8 hours, it's really important to upload the right programs. Because if we just put a new one in and you start running the old programs again, it's going to get clogged up. There's going to be viruses. There's going to be all that, the jam in the hard drive.
Yeah.
So it's all about putting in a new hard drive. That's an 8-hour process. And then program it with really empowering programs that is going to best serve you so that you've got the latest HP laptop. Little plug for HP.
I'm in. You'll be getting a call after this. No. That's fantastic. So can you share with us a story? Do you have any particular people, obviously keep their privacy for them, but if you can share with us any particular changes that you've seen in people by doing this personal breakthrough formula?
Yeah, I've had lots. So I've done that 75 times, that process now over the last 3 years. I'll give you an example of the last one that I did. So the last one that I did was a girl from New Zealand, and she had a lot of fears and insecurities and never really felt safe, right? So what I did was we went through that process, and it actually stemmed from a lot of anger and sadness from her early childhood. She was adopted at a very young age, so, took on a lot of beliefs like that. Her adopted parents weren't that great. What we did was by removing all that negative attachment associations and all that kind of stuff, she went from living in fear, i.e. locking all windows and doors every night, having heavy blankets on her bed and everything, to sleeping with the windows open and not being worried about locking the doors, because she felt confident in herself that she could handle any situation instead of being taken advantage of. Because everything up until that point, she'd been taken advantage of through all her relationships, every connection she'd had in life, had a lot of times where she was taken advantage of because she didn't know how to back herself. Right. But now, and this was overnight, literally overnight, she just said, I can sleep with the windows open. I feel safe. I feel secure. And I back myself to handle any situation presented to me.
And then I guess it's the confidence when there is that quite monumental shift that you've got to stick to that, because sometimes the people around her, I can imagine, if she's, I guess, used to letting people take advantage of her, that's going to be quite a shock for those people when she can stand up for herself. So do you provide, I guess, the tools for, you can do it yourself, you feel great, but that ongoing support? So when you're faced with these people who kind of don't like the new you because you're not going to put up with their shit anymore. How do people face the actual reality of getting into those circumstances?
Yeah, and it's a great point, and I say this to all my clients in this position. I say at the end of the session, I say, hey, you're the only person that's been working on yourself today in your life. You're going to go back, and everyone else is going to be the same, and they're still going to behave the same. So you're still going to be triggered by those behaviors. They're going to see differences in you, and what they're probably going to do is fear that you're going to leave them because they value you as a friend or a family member. They fear that you're going to change and leave them, so then they'll feel alone. So what they're going to do is try and drag you back, and they'll challenge you on all your new way of seeing things. So it's really important that you hold on to these new beliefs and thought processes about yourself. And then I give them this metaphor or analogy. I say, you've got a water tank that feeds your house on the farm, right? The water tank's up on the hill and it feeds the pipes in your house. Let's just say that water tank's been really, really dirty for a long time and the water tastes disgusting. What we've done today is we've emptied that water tank. Now that water tank was being filled by a pond further up the hill, and it was dirty water that was constantly filling that water tank. We've emptied the water tank, and we need to cut that pipe, and we need to run another pipe from a freshwater spring from the valley around the corner. And it's important we keep flowing the fresh water in, and that's by acknowledging all the learnings we've taken and applying the learnings we've taken. That's the fresh water that's going to fill your tank, which is going to give you fresh water in your house. Now, you've always got the option to go back and turn the old tap on, the other people in your life, and hang out with them the same way that you did and allow them to influence you. If you turn the old tap on, it's just going to put dirty water back in it. Here's what I suggest. There's going to be some of those pipes from the old pond that you need to cut and bury them and get rid of them, and just keep the fresh water running in and allow them to be the people that they are, but you need to be the person you are. And now I know that some people, in this situation might fear, well, what if I get separated from some friends and family that I still want to have in my life? What we don't realize is as we start to separate ourselves from certain people, we attract other people that are better aligned to us, other people that are on the same path of growth and a better life. So we make more new friends, high quality friends, rather than holding on to the ones that we're just grasping onto. We no longer have desperation with friends. We embrace friends that are going to support us.
No, I love that. That makes so much sense. And I love that analogy there. And that certainly shows that you are a farm boy. And I want to talk about that for a little while. I've got a question here from Mitch, who says to tell us about your family farm. And from that, I'd like to expand on that and say, with your NLP, you work a lot with the farmers who have been through so many challenges. So if we can move this a bit, I guess, to that agricultural realm. But yeah, tell us about your family farm and how you related that to the work that you're doing now.
Yeah, cool. So the family farm here is, well, it's 500 acres now. It was originally 1,000 acres when I was working here. And I was sort of running this alongside Dad. And then I was actually working on other farms. I was doing casual contract work on other farms as well. So I'd
what
work
sort
on
of farm did you have, Shane? Sorry, what sort of farm?
It was all sheep and beef.
Sheep. Yeah, sheep and beef. Yep.
Yeah, all sheep and beef. So fattening beef and just running ewes to raise lambs, and would share them obviously and all that kind of stuff as well. So that was all the kind of work that I did right up until I was 40 years old, apart from the 6 years in the army. How do I relate what I've done here into what I do now is, well, I mean, farmers are resilient. And I find that I'm very resilient in the coaching space, where I will do whatever it takes to get the client the result. I won't let anyone down. I won't leave anyone hanging, because just like a livestock, if you've got a sick cow or the sheep are unwell, you do whatever it takes to get them back on track. And I apply that to my coaching too, where I will do whatever it takes to help that client get the breakthrough that they need for that day, so that they can go out and face the next challenge of life. And it's really important, because I'm not going to leave anyone behind. Also, that resilience around working through those tough conditions, whether it's the drought. I know there's massive droughts at the moment, but you get the floods, you get the snowfalls, you get the wind and all that kind of stuff that does massive damage. Or you might just have an outbreak of an illness within the herd or in the flock of the sheep, right? How do you overcome that? Well, you find a way. You get resourceful. Farmers are super resourceful, because they can't just shoot to the shop every day to grab something to fix something, right? You become really resourceful to fix whatever needs fixing on the farm. So my resourcefulness, my commitment to make sure they get the result, because I'm not just going to leave a sick cow out in the paddock, just like I'm not going to leave a sick client on the end of the phone or anything like that. I think it's been really important.
That's amazing. And how did you actually get into, I guess, having these one-on-one conversations from the farmers? We know, and hi to all you amazing farmers out there, that they're very proud. They're a very proud bunch. And we've talked with Kirk Reynoldson on the first series about I guess that blockage to asking for help. So how on earth did you get to, I guess, sit in front of them and start talking about NLP? How did you break into that?
Well, the first thing was to share my story. I mean, if anyone wants someone else to open up, share your story, because then they see the vulnerabilities you've got and that it's safe, because they're not going to judge you. If they've got a story or something that's very similar to yours, they're definitely not going to judge you. So how did I get into it? Was sharing my own story. And then that way that would crack open the shell of, actually, it's okay to talk about the things that you struggle with, especially in your mind, because there's the stigma. Farmers are tough. They don't talk about their feelings. Don't show any sign of weakness. You'll get taken advantage of. But it's not about that at all. It's all about, I talk about vulnerabilities. If you're not willing to expose a vulnerability, then you're not willing to strengthen yourself, because your vulnerability is a weakness. If we don't bring it up and talk about it, then you're going to hold that weakness yourself, and it's going to hold you back. I always say in those coaching sessions, I say, when I start the breakthrough formula, I say, the one thing you hold on to today is the one thing that will hold you back forever. And when people realize that and they fully embrace everything and let go of everything, then they can strengthen every part of themselves. Because if you hold on to a weakness, it will be the weakness that gets exploited going forward.
So without knowing, I mean, you've been in this business 3 years, you've spoken to a lot of people. There are hundreds and hundreds, thousands of farmers out there. Do you have a tool, so if they can't come to you and they can't do your coaching, is there anything specific or any top tips or tools that you could share with them to help start that journey for them?
Yeah, there's 3 things I'd love to share, actually. The first one is, and it's a real common one, is gratitude. Like, if you're stuck in any state of mind, if you go to a state of gratitude, you will get yourself out of it the fastest way possible, because you can't be grateful and angry at the same time. You can't be grateful and sad at the same time. You can't be grateful and fearful at the same time. So when you're in a full state of gratitude. So I give this exercise to a lot of my clients. I say, for 30 days straight, write down 10 things every morning that you're grateful for. But that's 10 different things every morning. At the end of 30 days, you've got 300 things that you are grateful for in your life. So then if you feel yourself getting stuck, you just go back and read either the whole list or even just 5 or 10 of those things on that list. And it's going to remind you of what you have, because gratitude reminds you what you have. The second one I do is pride. Same exercise, 10 a day for 30 days, of all the things you're proud of achieving. You're proud of achieving yourself. A lot of people go, oh, I'm proud of my son for winning the race, or I'm proud of my daughter winning that competition. Be proud of supporting your son to do that, or be proud of your daughter to do that. And when you start stacking all those things up, go be proud of learning to tie your shoelaces, learning to ride a bike, helping the little old lady across the street, donating to that charity, achieving that, maybe that certification, or, winning that race, or just finishing a marathon. Be proud of all those things, because that's going to remind you that I am enough. The biggest limiting belief that I see is that I'm not enough. When you stack up 300 things you've achieved, stacking, then you'll realize, man, I've achieved a lot. I am enough. I'm super valuable and I'm worthy.
And that is so valuable. And we talk about this a lot in the corporate space with a lot of businesses, and a lot of, I'm a business owner, have been for a long time, and a lot of people on here are too. And we have this tendency sometimes of, we'll do something really amazing. We'll work on an amazing project or something like that. And then we kind of finish and we're like, oh my God, we've got to go to the next one. Where's the next dollars coming from? Where's the next, for the next project coming? And we don't often stop and celebrate and go, holy moly, that was amazing. And I think that's just such a simple thing that we can do. So you're saying 10 things in the morning you're grateful for, and then 10 things every day that you're proud of.
Yeah.
And do you find that people initially have a block? I guess they've got to get going to start understanding that, because I can imagine if someone is in a really down and out state, that's going to be a little bit of a struggle for them to even come to terms with that they are great. So how do you get them off the block?
Yeah. Oh, I always say start with the little things. I mean, normally when people do this, the first day is easier, the 10 things. I'm grateful to have a house. I'm grateful to have food. I'm grateful for my family, my job and all that, a car and all that. Real easy stuff, right? It's when you break it down to the little things that then you start to notice the little things. However, if someone's already in a pretty low state, just be grateful that you do have the house, or that you have blankets on your bed, or that you've got your phone and all that kind of stuff. And then be proud that actually you got up today. Maybe it wasn't as early as you wanted, but you got up. Be proud that you got yourself out and you went to work. Be proud of that little achievement you made at work, or be proud that if you don't have a job, you actually went online and looked for a job. Be proud that you even applied. Even if you've been turned down for 10, 15, 20 jobs in a row, be proud that you're still applying. It's those little achievements like that we miss because we're so focused on what's wrong, whereas we should be focusing on what's right, because what's wrong is always available, so is what's right.
That's amazing. And it's that thing you said before about being enough. Sometimes we have this expectation of ourselves to, we've got to get up every morning and go to the gym or do a half marathon or something, whereas it's getting to the point where if I get out of bed and I just go for a little walk for 5-10 minutes and it makes me feel better, then on that day, that's enough. And it's not always about pushing and pushing and pushing. It's about kind of being with what we've got on any given day.
Yeah, and it's all about stacking the little wins. If you don't stack and celebrate the little wins, then when, like you said, if you get to the end, you don't know how to celebrate the big win. So you've got to stack the little wins and celebrate along the way, really celebrate the big win. But what normally happens, especially in the farming world, is farmers are busy. They don't have any time. They've always got to be doing something. So it's like work, get the achievement and go out and start doing the next thing straight away, because I don't deserve to celebrate because I have to be busy. I'm not allowed to take the time. I'm not allowed to take a weekend off to go and celebrate the harvest or celebrate the shearing or anything like that. I have to get straight into the next task, because farmers have this reputation of being hardworking, always working 24/7. But the problem is burnout.
Exactly. And just when you said that, that made me think of, Drought Angels created their RDO, the Rural Day Off, because of this, to just give one day that, the farming community can come and relax and get fed and listen to music and have their hair done, and those things that I guess other people take so much for granted. But you saying that reminded me that has become an official event because it's not part of their normal routine and life. And so maybe there's a shift in changing that a little bit. And so that's 10 things to be grateful for, 10 things to be proud of. What's the third tip?
Oh, yeah, journaling. So I know that a lot of farmers and a lot of people, but a lot of farmers have trouble sleeping. They get overwhelmed. They think a lot at night, and they lose a lot of sleep, and they're awake a lot. So I always talk about journaling, and journaling is quite simply just have a notepad beside your bed or a notebook, not your phone, because that's got different effects on the eyes and stuff. So have a pen and paper beside your bed, or maybe just in the office. And if you can't sleep, just wake up and start writing whatever you're thinking, even if it doesn't make sense. Because what's happening is in your mind as you're lying there and you can't sleep, is it's like a little pinball that can't get out the hole at the bottom. It's just bouncing back and forward, back and forward. When you write, what you're doing is taking that thought out of your mind. You're sending it through your arm, through the pen, onto a piece of paper. This is like on an energetic level, on a quantum level, right? So then that thought belongs to the paper. So then you're releasing the pinball or the thought onto the paper, and just write and write and write until you're out of thoughts. And it might take you 20 minutes, might take you 30 minutes, might take you 5 minutes. But when you do that, then the thoughts got a way out. So then it won't bounce around the brain anymore. And then you'll become in a much calmer, relaxed state. And then you'll be able to sleep. So a great skill or a great thing to do every day is actually journal before you go to bed. Before you get, 10 minutes before you go, just journal how your day was. Now, a lot of farmers just do it through the diary, but maybe journal a bit more about your feelings, but also plan the next day. Look into what's happening the next day and schedule it. Cool. 7 o'clock, I'm doing this. 9 o'clock, this is happening. 1 o'clock, the bank manager's coming. 3 o'clock, the contractor's coming. 5 o'clock, I've got to make sure I do that before I finish up for the day. When you schedule it, then you're giving your brain direction. And the reason that we have that pinball is because we don't have full direction. So give your brain direction, get the pinball out of your mind, and then there's no reason why you won't sleep.
I love that. And you reminded me, I used to do that all the time, religiously. And don't. So that's fantastic. And I think it makes a difference for anything in life, writing it down. And I have this exercise that I use with my kids, similar, but for the capacity of their age, where we go into bed and it's like, I can tell something wrong, what's wrong. And they say the thing, and it would be like, can you do anything about it now? And they'd be no, and we'd throw it out the window. Like actually do the action of throwing that, get rid of it out the window. But I love, and I have always found that if you write it down, you release it, and it organizes your brain. So you know exactly what you're doing, which is fantastic. Speaking about all this, I mean, getting off topic, but it's not like, do you get, I don't know, frustrated, in the education system or the political landscape, you must see so many things where you were like, if people understood this, then the world would be so much different. And if they understood it from a younger age, you know, we can change the leaders of the future. Have you done any work in that space, or is that any plans for you or something that you're interested in? You're laughing.
Really hard to change. Yeah, I know. Political landscape, pretty hard to change that on your own, and even the educational system. So I guess the short answer is no. I've never really approached that as in gone in with the intention to help shift all that. My intention is just to help shift the way that we see the world now, so we can pass those lessons on to our kids. Because my belief is that if I help someone, they will help someone else, especially their next generation. So if I help one farmer today and then he helps his 3 kids, then that's 4 people I've helped. Now those 4 kids, those 3 kids are going to help their 3 or 4 kids each. So then it becomes 12 or 15. And then that's going to get the generational change going forward, so that those kids grow up in a much more resourceful state where they believe that they can face and handle any challenge as it pops up, rather than being triggered by those fears, doubts, and insecurities and regressing and then just sitting tight, hoping the challenge will go away, because it's not just going to go away. It's more about, cool, how can I be resourceful enough and strong enough to face and handle any challenge without the assistance of anyone else? Because if you're relying on someone else and that person never comes, you're going to stay in a state of suffering.
And I guess it's the thing, it's adapting and taking on board the skills that you can manage on your own, because, you know, you can't have most people can't have a 24/7 NLP coach all the time. So it is, like you said, learning how to be able to do it on your own. You came into this career quite late. And you sort of explained that you got to a point where you were just kind of fed up and started looking online and everything like this. But do you think it was always in you in some capacity, or was this? So when you started learning about NLP, did it just instantly make sense to you, or was it something you had to change your thinking about?
For me, it made instant sense, the NLP side of it. So yeah, and it just, I could just apply to it really easily, and I understood it very easily. Was it always in me? To be a coach, not necessarily, but to help people, yes. Because if I look at my life now, I left school and went straight into the army. So I help a lot of people within the army, within the forces, right? I'm there to serve the country, and I'm also there to help everyone within the military and stuff like that. We went to East Timor and helped a lot of people there. So, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed doing that. Now, also, not long after I left school, I actually started rodeo bullfighting as a rodeo bullfighter, rodeo clown. What do? They protect the rider, right? And I did that for 19 years in New Zealand, Canada, and Australia. So I've always had, you know, I guess I've always had this innate desire to help people that are in trouble. And, you know, it was naturally led to becoming a coach. And I get a lot of my old rodeo mates going, oh, you know, I'm not surprised you're a coach now, Shane. You used to save us in the arena. Now you're saving us within our mindset.
Wow.
So I guess it was always in there. Recognize it early.
That's amazing. So a rodeo bullfighter, I've just never met someone with that's had that job title before. So your job is to be in the ring and you're protecting the rider.
Yep.
So but then what happens to you?
Oh, well, that's the question. The rider will ride generally for 8 seconds or less. Well, it's 8 seconds to get a ride. Once he gets off the bull, my job is to be a better target for the bull than the rider. So it's quite simply, like I'd always say whenever I was teaching anyone, was make the gap. Make the gap between the rider and the bull, and then deal with the situation. Deal with the raging bull in that situation. Now, sometimes the gap might be 3, 5, or 7 meters long. Sometimes the gap's like that, but you're still got to make the gap. And that's what happens to me there, is you get knocked around. You can get thrown around and get beat up pretty bad. But I didn't think about that. I didn't think about myself in that situation. I thought about how hurt that rider is or is going to be. And I was in a better position because I was already on my feet. Whereas the rider quite often would, you know, they quite often get bucked off and land on their back or their side or their hands and knees. So they don't have the agility or the capability to get up and get away straight away. So I come in there and make the gap and then get that bull's attention long enough for that rider to get away. Sometimes they get knocked out. So I've got to keep that bull's attention for a long time, but still lead them away. But I do whatever it takes to make sure that happens.
which comes back to what you were saying earlier about being on the farm, that innate part of yourself to make sure the animals are okay and not leave someone. That's quite interesting that led you to doing this, that for a long time. That's quite fascinating. I think you need to definitely add that in your profile on LinkedIn. I think radio bullfighting.
Oh yeah, probably should. Didn't even think.
It's fantastic. Now we've got 15 minutes left. I'm going to remind people to send any questions to us. Yeah, I've got Angela here who goes, such a cool job. People are interested in the radio bullfighting. But back to you. Can you share any more stories? I would love to hear anything particular from any of the farmers that you have helped. The transition you have seen in that perspective, when you first went to them and then after you helped them, just from that farming perspective.
Yeah. So lots of very similar stories. The one thing that always comes up is they're much faster to make decisions. So I know that procrastination's a big thing, hesitations or self-doubt. So when we go through those kind of processes with the breakthrough formula, or even just my group program that Tash is actually a part of, it's all about having that inner confidence to make a decision. So then you get forward momentum. Because a lot of people, with something that's actually come up a lot lately, is they feel stuck. I hear this, I'm stuck in a rut right now. So I created a program specifically for that, how to get out of the rut. And it's all about having the confidence to make the decision to get forward momentum. Because if you're stuck in the rut, that's like that pinball. It's just going round and round and round and you're getting nowhere. But forward momentum is all about making a decision, and whether it's the right or wrong decision actually doesn't matter. It's what you do with the decision going forward and how well you make the next decision. Because you can make a decision, start down a path and realize it's the wrong one. But as soon as you realize it's the wrong one, it's a matter of making another decision to come back on track, rather than having that pride or that ego going, oh, I made that decision. If I say that, if I make another one now, I'll be wrong. I'll get judged. It's like, I'll just stick to that pig-headed type thing. Well, it's like, actually, that's not a smart decision, because that'll drive you into the ground. The smartest people and the most successful people are the ones who leverage themselves and make a lot of decisions constantly. They're making decisions daily in order to move themselves forward in the right direction. So forward momentum, and then make sure you're going in the right direction.
That's quite fascinating, actually, because and again, it's getting rid of those beliefs that, being judged, or what if I fail and everything like this. But you're right. When you think about really successful people, they just keep going, and they might have gone, through a lot of hardship or failed businesses, but it's because of the confidence in themselves that people go, oh, okay, and move on from that. So how do you develop that forward momentum and that type of thinking?
Well, the first thing is, what can I do? A lot of people go, oh, I'm stuck right now, I can't do this. A lot of the government legislations in both Australia and New Zealand right now, I know, is quite tough. They're clamping down and making it harder to operate as a farm. So now a lot of farmers are like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do that, and I can't do that. That might be true, but what can you do? When you start shifting your focus to what can you do, because then you're focusing to what you have control over. So often people get caught in what we don't have control of, and then try and fight that, instead of going, actually, what do I have control over? What can I do to move forward in that area right now? That then is going to start the momentum. So focus on what you have control over versus what you don't have control over. And I always say this, like, a lot of people go, oh, but if this was to happen, that'd be the worst thing that would possibly happen. And I don't know how I'd deal with it. I just say this: if it was to happen, what would you do? And they go, I don't want to think about it. They put their head in the sand. I don't want to think about it. I'll just wait for it. If it happens, it happens, and then I'll deal with it. But the problem is, if we wait for it to happen, then we have to find a way out. So then we take time and energy to do that and then we get on the back foot, and then we're left behind. Whereas if we prepare for the worst, then you've got a plan. As soon as it happens, you just whip out that plan and you activate it, and you'll be one of the ones that achieve faster. Because if you don't, you've got to find a way to do it, which takes up time.
And that's so true. And also the other bit that happens with, if you don't have that fail plan or whatever, your confidence can get really knocked. And then it's not just, I find with people, it's not just the failure of the execution or the failure of the plan, it's, as you said, being able to move on from that, because sometimes a lot of us just end up sitting, and it takes a long, like a relationship, it takes a long time to get to be able to move forward. It's like in business or these sort of things. It's like we just, kind of from the beginning, Angela has said, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Love that. So it is that it's being able to accept that things don't always go to plan, and that's okay. It's okay. And you can keep going. I've got a question here. What books would you recommend to help farmers' personal development? Good question.
Yeah, cool. There's a couple of really, really good question there, and I saw that earlier. So I had a couple of books that I really resonate with and that have been really helpful. The first one is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. That's a very good book on understanding how the mind works. Another good one is called Inner Size, INNERCISE. Inner Size by John Assaraf is a really good book. They've been two books that have had a massive impact on my life. Two other ones is Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's a really good book. It's just about overcoming fears. And I actually read another one by a guy called Ant Middleton. Now, Ant Middleton used to be Special Forces in the British SAS, and he runs the show SAS Who Dares Wins. So he's the chief instructor on there. He's written a lot of books. And he's got a book called The Fear Bubble. He's got that one. Another good one, is Zero Negativity. Is a really good book. It's a really good book on how to shift the negative mindset. So, yeah, those are really good books. And one last one, actually, I got one last one, is by Louise Hay. You Can Heal Your Life. You Can Heal Your Life is a really, really good book. A lot of farmers' wives will love that, because there's things in there about all different illnesses as well. But like any farmer blokes would get a lot of value out of that as well.
And that book has really stood the test of time. Like a lot of people mention her book. Some really, really good ones in there too. And what's your plans for the next year? What are you we talked earlier, you touched on setting goals, and that you'd never until a few years ago written a goal down for time. Can I ask, what was the goal that you wrote down? What was the first goal that you wrote down for yourself?
Well, the first goal was to pass the neuro-linguistic training that I was in. So that was a very short 7-day goal. But the first real goal that I wrote down and wanted to achieve was to save a certain amount of money in 12 months. It was in 18 months, and I achieved it in 12 months.
Amazing.
Now, I'd never set aside any savings, really in my whole life. But I never had a goal for savings in my life. So I set a goal in early 2019 that I want to save X number of dollars by the end of 2020, and I achieved it in 12 months. I achieved it 12 months later, so that was pretty cool. Since then, it's all been goals around it's all been about how many people I can coach or how many lives I can impact. So I set big numbers at the start of every year or at the end of each year, ready for the next year to impact some lives. Next 12 months, so I'm going to probably set a goal around I want to get back to, I want to grow my group programs and my one-on-one coaching, but more so my group, so I can impact many at once. And with that in mind, I want to, now that we can travel a lot more, I want to get to maybe do a bit of a tour, especially around New Zealand and most likely around some of Australia as well, and go and run some events in these small country towns. I did one when I was back here a few months ago, and just in the local town here in Fielding, and had about 30 people turn up. It was really cool. It was really cool to be able to offer just a conversation like this. There was just lots of questions, and I just offering off the cuff answers. And it was a really great way to be able to connect with farmers and show them what's possible, because I guess the way that I look at it is I want to give them tools, systems, and strategies that they can apply to their life. Because 100%. I've been to a lot of other seminars before where I've been to so many seminars where it's all about raising the awareness. The suicide rate is this is the depression rates and all this, and all we hear about is the stats. But nobody really, you leave there without any practical tools that you can apply.
Yeah.
So all my trainings, I make sure I'm giving tools, systems, and strategies that you can go out, you can walk out of the room or log off on Zoom and actually apply it straight away. Just like the pride, gratitude, and the journaling. That's something you can apply, and I know it's going to have a profound impact if you do it.
And it's going to have that, you said something right at the beginning that I so relate to, going to Robbins. You go to those sort of seminars and you're so charged up, but you're not going to come home and walk on fire or coals. You're just not going to do that.
Yeah.
So it's being, I guess it's looking at the 80-20 rule, 75%, what can you do consistently for 75 to 80% of your life rather than having these massive peaks. It's the same people, if they want to start working out, they go 6-7 times a week and we're amazing. We do it for 2 weeks and then it goes to nothing. I guess, it's maintaining that consistency that's realistic within your own self to be able to do that, which I love. Shane, I'm going to pull Tash back on in a minute, but is there anything else? I mean, we could talk to you all day, and I think from this, and we'll share on the Drought Angels website your contact details in case people want to chat and do your program, because it sounds amazing. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us that you haven't been able to get out yet?
I think I'll just recap what you said there. Is learning something is one thing, but if you don't do what you know, then you don't know it. So a quick example was, I remember I did a shearing course when I was at high school, 1 day shearing course, right? Never shorn a sheep before, did the 1 day shearing course. And on that shearing course, we had an instructor and he was there. So as soon as that sheep would kick or fight or squirm or whatever, we'd just stop and look up and say, hey, Don, how do I overcome this? How do I overcome this challenge right now? And he'd be right there to help me, right? But what do you think I did? I left that shearing course, came home and said, Dad, run them in. I'm a shearer now.
Yeah.
I know how to shear sheep. He ran them in, 3 or 5 sheep in. I've got all these sheep kicking, fighting and squirming, and I don't have Don there to go, oh, hey, Don, how do I recover? Now, I was too proud to ask for more help. So I just struggled and fought my way through it. Frustration, anger, all that kind of stuff was coming up. Every time I was shearing, I just ended up pissed off. And I did that for another 10 or 15 years until I finally started working with a guy who used to be a shearer. And then when we were shearing, I'd say, hey, Steve, how do I do this? How do I overcome that? Improve my shearing like tenfold in a matter of 2 weeks. And it meant that because I had someone in my corner, someone I could call on a regular basis to get me back on track when those little challenges come up, that then I was able to move through and be a confident shearer. And it's the same for life. Going to something listening to this podcast or this video interview right now is going to be great. But if you don't have that regular check-in and if you don't apply what you've learned, then you're probably going to slip back into the old patterns. So find someone that can help you stay on track so that you can check in with as soon as that little challenge pops up so it doesn't become a big challenge.
And that has been such a common theme, I guess, throughout this whole webinar series, and that is asking for help. That seems so simple. We've got to do that, but you have just said it, and Kirk said this as well. It's asking the right people for help. It's asking the people that understand you and can be there for you for help. So you're absolutely amazing. We're going to share your details on the site after, but I would love to pull Tash back on now to say a few words. And
hi, Shane. Thank you. I think there is a lot of inspiration in there for everybody to take away from your talk today. I know I am working with you on your course and I can highly recommend it. It has definitely been life-changing for me and looking at life in a different perspective. I think because we all at some stage have some sort of trauma or childhood problems or that we do take into this stage of life. And I know for me, it has definitely shown up in the last few years. So Shane has been a really great inspiration and motivator for me to shift my mind shift. So I do recommend having a look at checking out Shane's website and Facebook page, A Farmer's Mind Shift. A wonderful person and has a lot of motivational tools there.
Amazing. Thank you. And finally, to the Drought Angels team for putting this webinar series on. They are absolutely incredible. And like we said before, that they help so many people humbly a lot of the time, and they can't do it without your help. So we would love you anything you can do to help Drought Angels, go to their website too. But Shane, thank you so much for today. You're amazing. You'll be hearing from me, and I'm sure so many more people after this. But yeah, really appreciate it. We'll let you go back to having your holiday now, back in your hometown. And everyone today that has listened in, we really appreciate you coming on board. We hope you've got something from it. We will have this video up, link up either tonight or tomorrow on the Facebook. Please share with your friends and your community, because this sort of knowledge and motivation in such a real and authentic way is quite hard to find. But thank you for being part of our journey, and Christmas and New Year, and we'll talk to you all soon.